Hi, my name is Rachel and you're watching the Rachelistic channel. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome to my channel. So today's video is all about stimming. If you already know quite a lot about autism and neurodiversity, then chances are you already know all about stimming. But if you don't know quite as much and are still learning, then this video is for you. Of course though, if you're one of those people that already knows a lot about stimming, you are still very welcome to stay and watch this video. You never know, you might learn a thing or two. So without further ado, let's talk about stimming. So first, let's start with a definition of stimming. So what is stimming? So stimming is a form of self-stimulatory behavior that includes repetitive behaviors, movements, or noises that are mainly used as a way to focus or to self-soothe. So basically it's doing things repetitively or doing repetitive things to help calm yourself down or deal with your emotions or to focus on a task or something that you're doing. So some things to keep in mind when we're talking about stimming is that stimming can be either uncontrollable and automatic or controllable and purposeful. So sometimes when people stim, they're purposefully stimming, like they are consciously doing the stim. But other times when people stim, they are not consciously doing it. It's something that happens like automatically or kind of out of their control. And another thing to keep in mind about stimming is that it varies from person to person. So some people stim really visibly and like obviously, while other people might stim more subtly and like it's less obvious that it's a stim. And then also some people just stim more frequently than other people. Let's make sure to keep that in mind and to remember these things as I continue to talk about stimming. So before I get into what stimming can look like, I want to talk about the people who stim. So who stims? Cool. Well, technically everyone like stims in one way or another. If you've ever like bounced your leg when you're nervous or like bitten your nails when you're bored or like doodled on your homework, then you've done a self-stimulatory behavior. And stimming is a self-stimulatory behavior. So, if you've ever done one of those things, then you've kind of stimmed-ish, not really, but you've done a self-stimulatory behavior, which is the same thing as stimming is. Everybody does a self-stimulatory behavior at least once in a while, so everybody can understand what stimming is. In a way, everyone can at least relate a little bit to what stimming is. So stimming is mostly associated with autism because it is mentioned in the DSM-5 under the diagnostic criteria for autism, but more recently it has also been associated with ADHD. So autistic people and ADHDers stim. Those are the people who stim. I'm not sure if any other neurotypes out there stim as well. When I was, doing the research for this video, the only types that came up was autism and ADHD. So yeah. So I don't know if any others stim, but as far as I know, it's just autism and ADHD. So now I just want to take a quick moment to talk about the difference between stimming and fidgeting, because I know that fidgeting is associated a lot with ADHD, and so if you're hearing like, oh, stimming is ADHD, but I thought fidgeting, what is the difference between stimming and fidgeting? Because you hear fidget toys and stim toys and they kind of seem like the same thing. So what is the difference between those two? I'm going to talk about that now. Yeah. So when I was doing the research for this video, I was also wondering like, what is the difference between fidgeting and stimming? Because they do seem kind of similar. So what I found is that stimming and fidgeting are both under the umbrella of a self-stimulatory behavior. So as I kind of talked about before, like everyone does a self-stimulatory behavior at some point in their lives. So fidgeting is just kind of another type of self-stimulatory behavior. Whew, it's kind of a mouthful to say that word. So what separates stimming from fidgeting is that fidgeting is typically like small movements that are not quite as repetitive as a stim would be, and they're mostly done when someone is like bored or trying to focus. So meanwhile, stimming is a lot more repetitive and includes a wide range of behaviors, and it's done for like more reasons than just like out of boredom or to focus on something. So sum it up, fidgeting is just like small movements like tapping your foot or like shifting in your chair or whatever to help with like boredom and focus, while stimming is more repetitive. It's a lot more different types of behaviors and stuff, and is done for a lot more reasons. So yeah, fidgeting is small things, stimming is a lot of things. So yeah, if anyone needed clarification on the difference between stimming and fidgeting, I hope this helps. So now let's get back to the stimming. So now that we're finally here, what does stimming look like? So as I said before, stimming varies from person to person, and there are a lot of different ways that stimming can look. So the easiest way I found to discuss what stimming can look like is to talk about them in like different categories of stimming. So from my research, I kind of put together, or I found like 7 different categories of stimming. So the 7 categories I have are visual, verbal, auditory, tactile, balance-based and body movements, oral, and olfactory. So those are the 7 that we're going to talk about today. So first we'll start with visual stims. So visual stims involve looking at things or staring or just making things like visually appearing or like nice to look at. So some examples of visual stims are things like staring off into space or zoning out, which I didn't know could be a stim, but once learning about it, I realized that that is something that I do. Another example is like spinning objects, so like spinning like a coin, and like just watching it like spin around like that, or just staring at moving objects in general. Another example is lining up objects or organizing things or like folding and unfolding like laundry. It's like a part of the whole like making things visually appealing. So like lining things up so it looks nice and you can just look at it all like nice and neat, or like organizing stuff so it looks nice and you can just look at it looking nice, if that makes sense. And the same with the folding of the laundry. And then some other examples are like looking at something like sideways or like upside down, and then like fluttering your fingers by the eyes, so like that. So yeah, so those are kind of some examples of visual stims. So next is verbal stims. So verbal stims are stims that involve making sounds. So some examples, so the biggest example is like echolalia, which I have made a video about. So if you haven't checked it out, it will be linked in the corner. So you can learn more about echolalia. But just as a quick definition, echolalia is just repeating like words or phrases. So that is a verbal stim. You're like repeating words or phrases. Some other examples of verbal stims are repeating sounds, excessive giggling, clearing your throat, grunting, clicking your tongue, whistling, or humming. So the next category is auditory stims, which can look pretty similar to verbal stims, but auditory stims are more focused on like hearing things and listening to things. So some examples are like listening to like music or other sounds repetitively, covering your ears, like over and over again like that. Repeating words again, mimicking sounds, and like humming. So those last three ones are kind of similar to like verbal stims, but they can also be auditory. So the next category is tactile stims. These stims involve like touching and like feeling things. So some examples are like rubbing your fingers together. Another is like picking or like peeling your skin, or rubbing your fingers or hands on like different textured surfaces. So if something is like soft and you like to feel that a lot, or like something that's like bumpy or spiky or whatever, just like feeling those textured surfaces a lot. And brushing your hair repetitively, or like your skin, and then like fidgeting with your clothes. So next are balance-based and like body movement stims. These focus on stims that involve like moving your body or in some type of way. Some examples are like spinning, rocking, swinging, tiptoe walking, swinging your arms, finger flicking, hand flapping, which is like the most well-known stim, I think, jumping, twirling, raising and lowering your eyebrows, or bouncing your legs. So those are all like those balance-based or list movement stims. So the next category is oral stims. So oral stims are anything that involves like biting or chewing, or like using your mouth but not in a speaking way. So some examples are like biting your nails, chewing on like your hair, or like on like pens or just other objects, chewing like the inside of your cheeks or your tongue, or even like sucking your thumb could be an oral stim. And then the last category is olfactory stims. And so those stims have to do with your nose, so like sniffing and like smelling things mainly. Some examples are like smelling scented candles or other scented products like repetitively, or like sniffing your clothes or sniffing other objects. Yeah, but it's basically just sniffing and smelling things. So anything that involves that is an olfactory stim. So those are all the categories of stims and some examples of what they can look like. So I just want to point out that the categories are not like strict categories that are like super important to remember. It's really just a way to help explain, or to help show that like stims are like can look very different. That like it's a wide range of like behaviors and stuff, but it's not like super important to remember all the categories specifically. It's just to help point out that like lots of different behaviors and things can be a stim, is really the point. As I said before, like with the auditory and verbal stim, some of them can look the same, and it really just depends on the person. So for example, like twirling a pen like in your hands or whatever, like it can be a visual stim for a person if they enjoy looking at the movement of the twirling pen, or it can be a tactile stim because they like to feel the pen moving through their fingers, or it could also be a movement stim because of the movement that is involved with twirling the pen. So as you can see, like not all stims neatly fit into one of these categories. It really depends on the person, and the categories are not really that important anyways. It's just a way to like show the different types of stims out there, and like how lots of different things can be a stim. So now that we know what stimming can look like, let's talk about why people stim in the first place. So as we discussed in the definition, stimming is mainly used as a way to self-soothe or to focus, but there are other reasons too. So we'll go through those now. So one reason people stim is to help with managing their emotions or to deal with uncontrollable emotions. So if they're feeling angry or upset, stimming can help to like soothe those like intense feelings and really help them like make sense of what they're feeling. And it also works for positive emotions. Like if you're really excited about something, stimming can help like release those emotions, I guess. Yeah, which brings us to our next reason for stimming, which is to help with like communicating, or to help communicate moods, or like express your like feelings. So as I said, like stimming can be used as a way to show what you're feeling. So especially if it's difficult to put into words. If you're feeling really happy and like you're one of those people that just like when they're happy, like instead of like it can be easier to just like do a little stim so people know that you're happy, instead of like doing like the more like, I guess, neurotypical way of just like smiling or something. I don't know. But yeah. Another reason people stim is to help manage sensory information. So if they're feeling really overwhelmed from a lot of sensory information, stimming can help to like distract them, or like help to like focus on like one thing so that they can like calm down and like not be so overwhelmed. And then on the flip side, if they're feeling like underwhelmed or like understimulated, then stimming can help to kind of add some stimulation to the mix to help them like focus or do whatever it is that they're doing. Stimming can also help people feel less bored, kind of similar to the other reason, but like, if they're just feeling like, they're underwhelmed, then stimming can kind of like add more to the experience. And then, yeah, another reason for stimming is to help with focus, as I've said before. I feel like this is really especially true for like ADHDers, because like stimming helps again with giving that extra sensory input, so it can really help with like getting them to focus on whatever they're doing. And then the last reason for stimming is that people just stim because they enjoy stimming. And it's fun, so they just do it because it's fun and they want to. So, yeah. So those are all the reasons for stimming. So whenever there's a conversation about stimming, there are usually people who want to know like what they should do if someone is stimming. And this is a valid question, because sometimes stimming can be harmful to the person or to people around them. And so it's important to talk about, what to do if that situation comes up. So if somebody is stimming, but it's not hurting themselves or hurting another person or like interfering with their daily life, then you don't have to do anything about the stimming. You can just let the person stim. Of course, if it's a situation where they're stimming because they're like overwhelmed or really upset, then you can help them out, but you don't necessarily have to do anything about the stimming itself. But if someone is stimming and it is hurting themselves or hurting another person or interfering with their daily life, then that is a situation where you should do something about the stimming. So I'm not really an expert on this topic. I just want to put that out there. So if this is something that you want to learn more about, like what to do in a situation where someone is, doing harmful stims, then I suggest that you, read up more about it, research it more, learn more from people who know more about this topic than I do, because I don't know much about it. Like, I don't really know. I'm not an expert, so I suggest if you want to learn more about it, then to, find those people who are more knowledgeable about this subject than I am. So from what I read online though, here are a few like basic things that you can do to help stop harmful stims. So first is try changing the environment and removing them from whatever it is that is upsetting them or distracting them. Second tip is to try providing a safer alternative. So something like jewelry, or like a pillow or something else to hit. And then the third tip is try redirecting their attention to something else so that they can, be distracted and stop doing whatever the harmful stim is. So of course, these are just some basic things that you can try to do. But again, if you want more information, then I suggest that you do more research and, seek out information from people who know more about this than I do. So if you're a person who stims and you're wondering if you should do anything about your own stimming, let's talk about it. So similar to my previous advice, if your stims aren't hurting yourself or hurting anybody else, then it's okay to stim. Stimming is actually, like, if you're a person who stims, stimming is actually good for you. It's healthy if you stim. So don't worry about it if it's not, if you're not doing something that hurts yourself or hurts another person, then you don't have to do anything about it. If you're nervous about, stimming in public or around other people, then you can, modify your stims to make them a little more subtle or less noticeable if that's something you're comfortable doing. If you're someone who's not nervous and you just stim out loud and proud, good for you. Go off. But also just remember that to be mindful of other people, and you don't want your stims to make somebody else like overwhelmed or get overstimulated is the word I was looking for. If you're in a position, where you're stimming and you can be mindful of other people, then try to do that. If you're in a position where you yourself are overwhelmed, then don't worry about it. It's okay. Just do you. Yeah. As long as your stims are helping you and they are not hurting you, then that's all that I care about. So, yeah. So that's everything that I have to say about stimming. I hope that it was informational and that you learn things. So yeah, but that's everything. That's all for today's video. If you liked it, then please give it a thumbs up so it can spread to more people. If you have anything that you want to say about stimming, then go ahead and comment it down below because I love to read you guys' comments. And finally, if you like watching my videos, then please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you know when I post my next video. And as always, stay Rachelistic, or whatever your name is istic, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, goodbye.